very good, we're losing the ability to read maps and to really understand them. So navigation, throughout thousands of years, how did people navigate, particularly on the sea? In the open sea, they relied on things like constellations. People understood, the average person understood about the Earth's wobble and how constellations constantly shift from season to season. Right now with Cameron, we're reading a book before bed every night at his request on constellations. It's a pretty old book, but the information is accurate. It's the same. And I never knew there were so many constellations. And I really don't, admittedly, I don't understand constellations because we have phones with these fancy apps that we point at the sky. They're calibrated, and as you point your phone's camera to a certain star, it'll identify the star or the planet or the entire constellation, and it does the work for us. And so we don't really have to think about these things. But throughout history, people have had to navigate by knowing and understanding constellations. As they would go along the sea, they would look at the layout of the land, and a lot of times they would stay close enough to the land so that they knew where they were going and they could get to their destination. Wind, they used wind for navigation. That was very common. In coordination with constellations, they would study wind patterns, and they would be able to tell based on jet streams and which way the wind was flowing across the ocean that it was incredibly consistent, and that could get them to pinpoint where they were and give them coordinates. Birds is another thing. Looking at the birds in the sky and studying birds and where they're going and their flight paths and knowing their flight paths. These were all really important ways to navigate ships in the open sea. It took all the senses, it took paying attention, it took education, and it took a crew working together. And I feel like as we navigate the church during COVID, we've become so individualized that we're not really relying on our senses or on each other very well. And so it becomes tougher to navigate, especially whenever things get tricky. And I feel like in a lot of ways the church is just kind of lost right now because individuals are lost. They don't know where they are. They don't know how to respond. And they're stuck in this holding pattern. There's an article that I linked to if you read the blog post that I put up once a week on the church website. I read a blog post that's kind of just a summary of what the sermon's going to be about. But I linked to this article by Tom Rainer. Tom Rainer is probably the most respected church statistician and consultant. And he wrote this article a few days ago called 6 Reasons Your Pastor is About to Quit. I'm going to just read a couple of excerpts from this. Here's what Tom Rainer says. By the way, he has met with thousands and thousands and thousands of Christians. He's interviewed people. He has an active blog site. He has an active ministry where he consults with churches. He has his finger on the pulse of the church in America. Tom Rainer knows what he's talking about. So here's what he said. Please hear me clearly. The vast majority of pastors with whom our team communicates are saying they are considering quitting their churches. It's a trend I have not seen in my lifetime. Some are just weeks away from making their announcement. By the way, this is not my quitting sermon. I'm not quitting. We're just going to clear that up now. He says they're looking for work in the secular world. Some will move to bivocational ministry. Some will move to marketplace ministry, but many will move. There's already a severe shortage of ministers in the church right now. Across all denominations, there's a severe shortage. People are not going into ministry, and people are leaving ministry. It's a compound issue. But especially during COVID, this is a problem. So he lists 6 of the top reasons from talking to different preaching ministers. He lists 6 of the main reasons. Number 1, pastors are weary from the pandemic, just like everyone else. And he goes on to say, they're not superhumans. They still have to do their work, and they have families to tend to. They're not superhumans. They're affected like everybody else. Number 2, pastors are greatly discouraged about the fighting taking place among church members about the post-quarantine church. In other words, what will the church look like on the other side of this? People are fighting over this. Churches are splitting over this. And he's saying these preaching ministers they're worn out from the fighting. Number 3, pastors are discouraged about losing members in attendance. He says, for sure, it's not all about the numbers, but imagine your own mindset if 1/2 or more of your friends stopped engaging with you. And he talks about, it's this deeply personal thing. It's not just members, it's not just warm bodies sitting in a pew. These are people you've come to know and love, and they're your family, and they're leaving the church. Number 4, pastors don't know if their churches will be able to support ministries financially in the future. A lot of churches have put so many eggs in the budget basket of sinking money into their church buildings that they don't know if they can support ministries. A lot of missionaries right now are scared to death because their income, the way that they put food into the mouths of their babies, is dependent on American churches that send funds out of their budget to meet their budgets. So right now, even the preachers in churches here don't know if they're going to have a future. And they don't know if they're going to be able to support other ministries. Number 5, criticisms against pastors have increased significantly. Tom said, one pastor recently shared with me the number of criticisms he receives are 5 times greater than the pre-pandemic era. Church members are worried, church members are weary, and the most convenient target for their angst is their pastor. Number 6, and the last point, he said the workload for pastors has increased greatly. Almost every pastor with whom we communicate expresses surprise at their level of work since the pandemic began. It really makes sense. They're trying to serve the congregation the way they have in the past, but now they have added the responsibilities that have come with the digital world. A lot of people are trying to figure out this online stuff who were not online. They had to get tech savvy if they were not tech savvy before. There's a huge learning curve for technology. Live streaming is not just click and then send. It's really complicated. Ask these guys. We built an entire booth. It's a lot of work. So the question is, what do we do about it, and how do we help navigate? How do we help our churches? I'm proud to say, first of all, I want to start by saying this to make this really clear. I am not one of these who's burning out, who feels unappreciated by my congregation. I'm not in this category, so I thank God for that. In fact, I feel kind of the opposite. I feel a little bit bad to say this, but I feel very blessed. As we've been navigating COVID, I feel like this congregation has done it well. Bob and Tex and I have had these conversations. We've had the exact opposite of infighting. We've gotten along really well. We're helping each other out really well. Members are checking on members at unprecedented rates within this congregation. So I want to go and I want to read this scripture because this is really important. This is listed kind of a subtitle, Marks of the True Christian. This is Romans chapter 12, one of my favorite passages in the Bible. I've spent 2 years preaching 2 different themes out of Romans chapter 12. I love Romans chapter 12. This passage is a passage that I read at a lot of weddings. For some people who don't know anything besides for 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast. I use this as an alternate text for weddings if people want something just a little bit less traditional, because it's so powerful. It's equally as powerful as 1 Corinthians 13. Paul says this, let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. My translation is vehemently oppose what is evil. The word that Paul uses in the Greek language is to get sick to the stomach over evil, to physically feel like you're going to vomit. Abhor, vehemently oppose what is evil. And hold fast is how it's translated. My translation is desperately cling. That's the sense of the word in the Greek language. Desperately cling to what is good. The imagery that comes to my mind when Paul uses this word is the cross. We have the song, I will cling to the old rugged cross. Desperately cling to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. It's kind of cool. Paul adds a little competitive component to that. Right? Outdo each other. If you see somebody showing honor, outdo that person. Do better. Do not be slothful in zeal. By the way, I should clarify this. By slothful, he doesn't mean cute. He means slow. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. You know, it's interesting. I'm going to pause here for a second. It's interesting to me that as you read this, it almost sounds like Paul's laying coordinates down for success. He doesn't say, well, just pray. Good luck. Things will get better. Hope it works out for you. Paul's being very precise, very specific in his instructions to the church in Rome. By the way, the church in Rome had all kinds of problems. All kinds of problems with fighting each other. The Roman church clashed like crazy. So this idea, what people are experiencing today during COVID, isn't anything new. When trouble comes, when tribulation comes, when times get tough, when life is hard, when society, you look at it and there's all kinds of political issues going on and literally things on fire, it becomes overwhelming, doesn't it? That was the circumstance in Rome. In Rome, which was the center, the political center for the Roman government, it was the capital. The Jewish people were expelled from Rome. They were kicked out by the emperor. For, I think it was 8 years, they were not allowed back in Rome. They had to leave their homes. The Christians had to leave their church. The people who are not yet Christians had to leave their synagogues. Jewish people were kicked out of Rome. Christianity continued. The Christians kept meeting. They kept gathering together week after week after week. When the Jewish Christians were allowed back in Rome, the Gentile Christians said, "You're not welcome here." It's not the first time that we've had to navigate difficult times. So Paul's laying very specific instructions down for how people get along, how they bless people. Verse 14. Back up verse 13. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Verse 14. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. That'll preach. Never be wise in your own sight. I'm proud to say that as we look at some of the works, some of the evidences, some of the fruits of this congregation, I'm going to share with you some blessings today because I think people just get depressed. You turn the TV on, you get depressed. You turn Facebook on, you get depressed. Life is tough for a lot of people right now. But here's what's going on with this congregation specifically. Saturday, I got a phone call from Mike, and he said the company that picks me up, the transportation company, will no longer pick me up unless I have a ramp. I said, funny that you called me now, because I was going to talk to our leaders on Sunday about getting you a ramp this week. It's hard to move a wheelchair up and down steps. And this company said, unless you can get down to the curb, we're not going to pick you up. If Mike's not picked up, Mike doesn't get dialysis. If Mike doesn't get dialysis, Mike dies. He called me up. I made 2 phone calls that day to 2 different church members. This was on Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, this ramp, which is a beautiful ramp, was complete. That's this congregation. That's Mike and Dave. After we wheeled them up the ramp, they temporarily laid the planks down so that we could get Mike up to the steps. It's a beautiful, beautiful ramp. That happened that quickly. I literally made 2 phone calls. Yes, that is definitely worth clapping. The other one is a little 10-year-old girl who is my daughter, Eden, and her friend Dakota. I've got to give a lot of credit to too, because Eden is raising money, as you know, for a well in Ganthier, Haiti. The well is $7,500. It's not cheap to build a well. Eden took up this effort. She said, I want to bless people. I want to put a well. I want it to be in Haiti since I've been there. That's personal to me, and she wants to visit the well when it's completed. And so I said, okay, basically get to work. I'll help you, but get to work. Get to work she did. I want to show you this. First of all, this was as of this morning. This is on Healing Hands International website, and you can see created by Eden Hinton. That video there, you can see my little picture in the circle. That's my YouTube channel. Eden made this video. So far, Eden has raised $6,000. A 10-year-old raised $6,000 of $7,500. And it's not just by holding her hand out saying, can you help give money? Eden and Dakota came up with this idea to do a yard sale and a lemonade sale. And so there's them at the house. They raised, what was it, almost $600 in 2 days. And Cameron and Tyler. I'm going to show the pictures of them. They organized it. They put it together, but they got helpers. So the first day, it was a monsoon. And these kids went out for 8 hours. They stood in the rain. For 8 hours, and they would not come inside. We were asking them to come in. We're like, please come in. You've got to take a break. Nope. We want to raise money for the well. They stood out literally for 8 hours that day. It's not a joke. That's not an exaggeration. And then the next day, it was blazingly hot. So Tyler came over to help. Isaac went out. They all stood out there all day long in the blistering sun. And Eden, the genius that she is, told Isaac, turn your sign upside down. It'll make you look really cute, and people will give more money. This is marketing at its best. And not long after that, a guy drove by, rolled down his window, just handed some money out, and handed it to Tyler. And Tyler said, he just gave $100. So the cuteness factor definitely worked. And there they are counting their money after. And I'm proud to say this too, 100% of these funds were given to the well. 100%, they gave it all away. They could have kept some, they could have done something, got themselves a treat. They didn't. They worked for 2 long, hard days. That's this congregation. So navigating COVID, how do we do it? What do we do about the stress of it all? You do this. Block out the people who are saying the world's coming to an end. Block out the people who are, trashing this political candidate or this political candidate, and if this person's elected, the world's going to end, and if this person's elected, you're going to lose everything. Just block it out and go out and bless people. That's how you navigate COVID. You bless people. And I'm proud and honored to serve at a congregation where you guys get it. I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys get it. And this is awesome. It's incredible. So I just wanted to boost you and say, well done. Keep up the good work. If there's anybody this morning who's not yet put Christ on a baptism and you would like to, or if you have any prayer needs and you want us to pray over you, you can come up, or our shepherds will be in the back. You can go talk to them as we stand and sing together. Let's stand.